Welcome to Teatro Absurdo with Huilo Marvavilla, brought to you by Jaguar Bridge Productions and The Great Mystery. Well, hello there, podcasters. Welcome to Teatro Absurdo. I'm Willow Marvavilla, and this is Series 3. Welcome aboard to that which is ludicrous, preposterous, crazy, and, if you're lucky, bedazzling. Well, okay, we're back, everybody. Welcome to Teatro Absurdo in the Jaguar Portal series as we explore art, indie film, Costa Rica, on a whole lot of new levels. So I hope everybody's doing well and whatever the latest absurdity is out there. I'm looking at two cameras. How do you do that? It's kind of tricky with the eyes, but some of you are just listening to this. So you're going to just have to use your imagination for what the paintings look like, or you can dash over to the YouTube channel and look into that. So I'm Willow. Thank you for listening and tuning in how you can, when you can. I hope aliens are tuning in from light years away. That's so cool. Hi, yeah, man, it's a little cuckoo nutty. Some human beings are pretty cool. All right, so I want to get back right away to the essence of art, symbolism, and the Jaguar Portal paintings, which will be coming, the new ones, 30 of them, count that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all good children go to heaven, to New York City in October 5th through 9th, the gallery on the Lower East Side on Allen Street, 42 Allen. And it will be a fundraiser for the expose art film, supernatural film, crime sequence film, whatever. Is that a good enough a pitch? Called Cries of a Jaguar. And I want to emphasize that cries, because people can sort of twirl words around. It's not like woo, boo hoo. It's crying out, calling forth, summoning. Maybe it should be called Summoning with a Jaguar, but that might sound too witchy. And cries also suggests an urgency, right? So there we have it. And the genesis. So I want to back up from last week's podcast where we were discussing the origins, sort of that spark that may have fired this quest to develop a series of intentional paintings, sacred art sort of thing. And it started with a sculpture in New Mexico. And I alluded to at the time, or prefaced, that it could actually be tracked, my opine opinion, to a sculpture that I purchased in around 1984 in the Yucatan of Mexico. And I remember specifically, I went to a night market in downtown Cancun. And back then, Cancun, they were just starting to build these mega Riviera resorts that now spread all the way down to Tulum, which have destroyed Tulum, but we won't get into that because I know there's a lot of New Agers out there that love to go down there and exploit and colonize and whatever and do good things, right? All of the above. So anyway, so in 1984, I buy this sculpture, and I must say, you know, I want to stand tall and also put out that I'm not an Aztec, nor Mayan, nor Olmeca scholar by any means. So please, if you're out there and you want to project negativity towards this description I'm about to give, but I believe that the sculpture was about, I don't know, I'm gonna say maybe 2 feet tall by about a foot across. had two hands out. I mean, there's a photograph here. Two hands out in front of it as an offering something that I often put candles in. I suppose you could put crystals in or incense or something like that. It had a flat top at the top of the deity that I could put crystals on top and things like that. So it was pretty evident that other than being, tourist relic, it was really exemplary of ritual art, which is something that we call forth. I mean, every church, every sacred doctrine, temple are all ritual art pieces to some degree. And I think that's the earliest, in my understanding, the calling forth of art for humanity was not necessarily to decorate your corner wall in your house, nor to be, an acclaimed collector of $1 million art. It was something to use to connect to other worlds, to call forth something, to honor something. And I think that this sculpture, I mean, the best I can try to decipher it, leans towards a deity referred to as Tetzcatlipoca, which in some tales and different stories is an entity or a deity, a divine energy field to represent and point to the god or a leader of the underworld, of the shadow world, which is something very, very important in our culture these days. So I henceforth bought that, and the piece, I didn't really know much about it at the time. It was lived in my dorm in New York City for a while, and then it traversed across the country to live with me in California. And I think at a certain point I was dating somebody that we're all calling forth divine mirrors, through lovers, through friends, through enemies, through jobs, all these things. Well, I summoned a lover who was very big into queer shamanism and I think at that point I started realizing and setting up the sculpture more as an ofrenda, an altar sort of thing. And and the piece did end up going back with me to Mexico for a few years and then on to Costa Rica. And again, there's two things. One, like the last piece, I think it fell over in an earthquake or something, and I put it back together, and I ended up putting crystals in the broken arms and stuff and reattached them. But as far as the natural, and the mystical elements, certainly that you will be able to see in the upcoming film, Cries of a Jaguar. It's not just a, whaley crime story, what's going wrong in Costa Rica or Central America. It's also just a fascinating, mysterious story that's still ongoing. I mean, who knows? But the sculpture has finally disappeared. Whether it was stolen or destroyed by unruly, and I'm calling them out, Christian neighbors, because I think that some religions have gotten really distorted from the pretense of love and forgiveness and generosity and compassion, and have gotten controlling and judgmental and all sorts of things right now that are brutal on the potential for humanity. So anyway, the sculpture has disappeared. I have no idea. It's gone, presumably forever, unless the FBI find it somewhere in Costa Rica as they begin to unravel 10 legal cases. But I think what it did is, for me personally, is it began to engage my curiosity around symbolism and art. Because okay, it's a deity and it has fangs and all these things, but there's all these little nuances which I really liked about Mesoamerican art is the real nuances, the real subtlety of all the lines and the glyphs and the characters and the movements within an art piece are fascinating. Like every single thing had a meaning. It wasn't just, something carelessly thrown on a canvas or carved out of a piece of stone. It had some sort of value to the total story of the piece. So I began to get very interested in that. And certainly, I would look at different artists that are celebrated that, began to get in the hands of very wealthy collectors as eccentrics, Dali and others. Remedios Barros, I want to bring in, the gender female as well, artisans. That deep symbolism was always very interesting, and curious about how we could instill things to start to develop ideas within the viewer of all sorts of things, change their perception or dive deeper into the mystic realms of parallel realities, other universes, the God consciousness, all sorts of things. So this said, as I said, I think, the development of these portal paintings and this type of art, I started to dive into symbolism, and I would get books on alchemical sigils and glyphs and of, arcane Judaism and Egyptology and all sorts of things. And I would, sort of glean from them and combine a collective story of humans and symbolism and art in these different pieces. So yes, at a certain point, like Leonardo and the Cabal and the Illuminati and whatever goes on in the Mona Lisa, I began to get very curious about the metaphysics, the physics of deep symbolism and how it might go into the eye and start to move the cones and rods and traverse through the, optic nerve into the cortex, which is the back of the brain, the visual cortex, and then thus shift perception or ideas about life and reality. And I was, I directed that energy to each piece because I thought, well, if people didn't have to do what I did, like, hallucinogenic plant medicines or yoga or breath work or all these things, most people try to elevate their consciousness, perhaps maybe through religion, through television, through smoothies, I don't know, or not. They just don't want to elevate their consciousness in this lifetime. But I thought that I could specifically do things in paintings, and I think this absolutely got more and more involved, certainly, as I said, from being in Mexico in 2005 and having the subsequent dream, the flight of the jaguar magician, and then the development of 5 books within that series and 170 illustrations. And interestingly enough, all of those illustrations, I think, are still alive, except for 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 in there have gotten destroyed in fires and theft and the conundrums of the magic of Pura Vida in Costa Rica. And, folks, I'm not diminishing Costa Ricans, Ticos, at all. I think they're stuck in the same thing that people are stuck in countries all over the world. I'm not a nationalist by any means. I don't really adhere to being necessarily an American, other than I'm very well aware of the privilege and the colonialistic behaviors that are so integrated in Americans and Europeans, and the colonialistic activities that we just do by default. However, if we don't speak to the shadow like Tetzcatlipoca and care for the shadow, then we vote and bring in other people to run our shadow world for us. And they have gotten to the point where, the wars are brutal, the piracy, they rob us blind, corporations, and are destroying the vital life force of this very planet. That's when we give. So what I think through some of these paintings is I'm inviting the viewer to take more responsibility for the magic of being human and having a consciousness. So those illustrations, interestingly enough, they weren't all painted in Mexico. Some were painted in Costa Rica, some were painted in the USA. But they almost got destroyed. Certainly, representations of them did. This is interesting. When I was living in Chile with a lover then who was named Jesus, yes, this queer boy dated Jesus. And we had rented a place up in the lower Andes, south of Santiago. And I was working on books 1 and 2, or 2 and 3 maybe. And I had photographs of the paintings, the illustrations, and I put them up on a wall in this cabin. It was an A-frame chalet, and I was on the upper floor doing this. And the place fucking caught fire. The wall caught on fire one morning, and the house burnt down. And I remember looking through the ashes, and you could see like curled remnants of the photographs, the illustrations in the ashes. So, so like a good queer artist, I divorced my lover, flew to Buenos Aires, cried with Evita. Then I flew to the Amazon jungle and went on a really deep vision quest. And that was that. So I think, again, when you come to see these paintings anywhere they're on exhibit or you see them digitally, there's the pause, the moment of contemplation beyond just, oh, isn't that pretty, or that's weird, or that's scary, or whatever one wants to project on the paintings, because I think inevitably the viewer sees what they need from these paintings. So if they're scared by them, or they're moved, or they're bored, or whatever, that's something the viewer is working on. And maybe I enticed them a little bit. I don't know. So we will close here. I want everyone to have an excellent next cycle of time until the next podcast. These are going to start rolling out because a lot of paintings I want to reveal. Building momentum for the big pop surprise, because I'm not going to release any imagery, maybe little teaser pieces of the new works that I'm developing here south of the border somewhere, to reveal for the first time the world premiere. That seems like how people like to get filmmakers to focus their work. Like, we only want you in our film festival if you're a world premiere. Okay, your film festival in Paducah, Kentucky? Right. Okay, and yay for Paducah. But so we have it there. That we'll take a break, and until we meet again, we're living in an absurd world, but remember, life is a cabaret. It's all theater. What actors are you casting, and what art are you casting in your life to become fully conscious? Bye. And that was it, my dear friends. Teatro Absurdo Series 3, brought to you by Jaguar Bridge Productions, angels, guardians, guides, and perhaps a few demons, if you're lucky, from the Underworld. So tune in to us on all the major social circuits around the universe.
Bye bye.